Tantor Audio, a division of Recorded Books, presents The Gift Within Us, Intuition, Spirituality, and the Power of Our Own Inner Voice by Mary Ann Bohrer. Narrated by Emily Durante. The workings of intuition transcend those of the intellect, and as is well known, innovation is often a triumph of intuition over logic. Albert Einstein. Introduction. A client of mine asked me to promote a new millennium clock, which was located in Midtown Manhattan when I was working as a PR executive in New York City. This clock, which was being unveiled in 1997, was counting the days, hours, and seconds until the year 2000. Since everyone was worried about what would happen after midnight January 1st, I decided to hold a press conference called the Millennium Festival. I invited gifted intuitives, psychics, and mediums to meet with journalists one-on-one and share their predictions about the future, as well as to provide personal predictions for any journalists who might want one. After doing research, I identified 24 gifted intuitives and scheduled the Millennium Festival for Friday, April 4th, 1997, just over 1,000 days before the year 2000. When the day came, I sat the intuitives at individual tables at TGI Fridays at 34th Street and 8th Avenue, one of my clients' restaurants. Incredibly, more than 75 journalists attended the event, including reporters from the Wall Street Journal, the Associated Press, CBS Evening News, Reuters, and many other respected media outlets. In addition, entertainment media came, including Inside Edition. The reporters could have a few minutes with each psychic or medium, speed dating style, and then move on to talk with the next intuitive. The response from these skeptical journalists was very interesting. The media people were impressed with the accuracy of these gifted individuals, and many wrote positive accounts of the event, which appeared in the press and on television, nationally and worldwide. Interestingly, after the Millennium Festival press conference was over, a reporter from the Wall Street Journal came up to me and said, "I'll be honest with you, Mary Ann. I came to this event today to make fun of these people and to write a silly story. But after I talked to them, I was in shock. They were so accurate that I couldn't believe it." I distinctly remember how pale this man's complexion was, like the blood had drained from his face. He truly wasn't expecting the intuitives to be as gifted, genuine, and real as they were. Thanks to this press conference, I became friends with many of the gifted intuitives I invited to the event. Some of them tell their stories in individual profile chapters, which reveal how they discovered their intuitive ability, whether they were accepted or shunned by family and friends, and how they made sense of being born with this marvelous and incredible gift, or how they came to it later, a gift that is still largely misunderstood in society. In addition, the gift within us will hopefully inspire you to look at these amazing people with open minds and hearts, and to be in tune with your own gifts, and to be open to the divine guidance that we all have access to simply by listening to our own inner voice. 1. The New Spirituality and the Essential Role of Our Own Inner Voice. A lot of people yearn to satisfy their spiritual needs and connect with the divine, but they've experienced a crisis of confidence in recent years. Many have turned away from traditional religion and the idea that one needs to be in a church or to rely on a clergyman to communicate with God. And recent sexual abuse scandals involving the Catholic Church have done little to bolster their confidence in these powerful but flawed religious institutions. Most of us are still seeking answers. According to the Pew Research Center, the number of Americans who feel a deep sense of wonder about the universe has increased dramatically in the past several years. Many of these spiritual seekers are asking, "What is my purpose? How can I be happy? How can I communicate directly with a higher power and the universe?" However, these individuals are now choosing to seek these answers for themselves and not looking for guidance within the walls of a church or a traditional place of worship. This increase in the spiritual but not religious category has grown rapidly. As Pew Research conducted from April through June 2017 states, about a quarter of U.S. adults, 27%, now say that they think of themselves as spiritual but not religious, which is up 8 percentage points in 5 years. But even as these numbers grow, those who identify as spiritual but not religious are searching for a new spirituality, one that doesn't define God as a storybook character who's looking down on us from some lofty, unreachable place. We're seeking a more modern, real-life, attainable God, a loving being that we can talk to directly and who will provide important answers for us, both about our lives, our purpose, and the universe itself. This point is illustrated by another survey conducted by the Pew Research Center from April through August 2017. It showed that people who say they are spiritual but not religious largely reject biblical God, but believe in a higher power of some kind. While only 12% of respondents in the spiritual but not religious category said that they believe in God as described in the Bible, those who said they do not believe in God were asked if they believe in some kind of higher power or spiritual force in the universe, and 64% responded positively. Interestingly, in another Pew Research Center study about religion entitled The Religious Typography, among those that consider themselves to be highly religious, 39%, a significant portion of this group, 11%, were categorized as diversely devout, individuals who were traditionally religious but who also believe in psychics, reincarnation, and that spiritual energy can be located in physical objects. As these studies illustrate, the concept of religion is changing rapidly. Many people are turning away from traditional religion towards spirituality, and even those who consider themselves to be highly religious are becoming more open to intuitive ability, psychometry, and reincarnation. They are seeking new ways to explore their spirituality, and they yearn to receive guidance directly through a higher power or a spiritual force in the universe. According to Archbishop Harry J. Flynn, former Archbishop of St. Paul and Minneapolis, people have always had the ability to receive direct spiritual guidance, even if they choose to attend traditional religious services. This direct connection has always been available to all of us, explained Archbishop Flynn. Some receive this guidance through prayer, some through meditation, and others by simply listening to their inner voice. We all have access to divine wisdom. It's just a matter of knowing and trusting that we are loved and worthy of receiving that guidance. Archbishop Flynn continued to illustrate this point by quoting St. John of the Cross, a Spanish priest and poet who became friends with Teresa of Avila and who was eventually canonized as a saint by Pope Benedict XIII in 1726. As John of the Cross, a great mystic in the Catholic tradition, once wrote, "God has spoken only one word, and he speaks that word eternally and in eternal silence. And it is in the silence of the heart that makes itself heard." This is why listening to your soul is extremely important. The more one listens, the more one can get in touch with deeper realities and divine insights. With more people feeling disillusioned and increasingly untethered from their religious institutions, it is easy to understand why so many are now looking for new ways to get in touch with their spirituality. Many may have lost faith in their church, but their faith in a higher power remains strong, so they feel that it's now up to them to move in a new direction and chart a new path to realizing their spiritual goals. This belief in a higher power and our ability to access its wisdom and divine guidance is directly tied in with intuition and the power of listening to our inner voice. And even if some people attempt to degrade intuitive ability, its role in creating spiritual connectiveness has been known throughout history. Down through the centuries, we've had people who were canonized saints, who had instances of mysticism, and were able to foretell future events and things like that, said Archbishop Flynn. The Spirit of God enlightens certain souls in different ways, and we can't control what God does. God is beyond us. People can have illuminations and foresee things that other people cannot, and sometimes that is a gift from God which we don't understand. Sometimes it's the fruit of their prayer. Sometimes it's a fruit of silence, when they can really go into the desert of their souls and see things that they would not ordinarily see. We have so many wonderful people and saints in the church, canonized saints, who have gone deeply into their own hearts, and as a result of that, had profound experiences of this sort. I would call it a gift, a real gift. I believe that we have always had the ability to communicate with this spiritual force. We just have to know that we have an intrinsic ability to connect. It's the very definition of the gift within us. Just by knowing this fact, we've already made great strides to realizing that amazing, empowering connection. Scientists who are studying intuitive ability share some amazing facts, and gifted intuitives tell us their stories and provide advice on how to connect with our higher power and the universe. Information that enables us all to gain much desired access to the greatest and, in some ways, the simplest form of communication available to each and every one of us every day. 2. Access your own inner voice. I've wondered why I have been inspired, or divinely guided, to write this book. After months of interviewing many highly gifted intuitives and respected researchers who are studying intuitive ability, I think I have the answers. One is to get the word out that people with psychic and intuitive abilities can be a tremendous help to us. The other one is to let everyone know the message that we are all born with the ability to tap into our inner voice, that quiet knowing people describe as a gut feeling, a hunch, a feeling in my bones. That feeling we often get when we are confronted with a difficult or challenging situation. It's a distinct feeling that we know is not coming from our brains, but we feel it anyway, and it informs us of what decision to make or what path to take. Multiple studies are being done by scientists to measure our brains during these instances to see what is happening. It is possible that the vibes we are getting at certain times are due to more than simply measuring how our intuitive right brain is interacting with our conscious left brain. Just as the gifted intuitives in this book often get their profound messages from their guides, angels who are there to protect and guide them, we each have a connection to spirit, wise, loving spirits who are looking out for us and who want to lead us down the right path. Perhaps we don't have the ability to communicate with these guides as clearly as highly gifted individuals do, but this wise inner voice is there for us to access, if we choose to. The challenge is that many people may not know that they can access this inner voice. Some may choose not to try because they think that the notion of intuition is absurd. Part of the reason they might think this is that society has spent years, actually centuries, denying or belittling intuitive ability. To some, intuition, a subject to make fun of, and no sensible people would entertain the notion that they can tap into their inner voice and receive valuable information. It is easy to understand why the concept of intuition has become so maligned. People who call themselves intuitives have been lumped into one ugly and unattractive stereotype. If you identify yourself as a gifted intuitive, you have to be a charlatan who is out to trick your clients and take their money. This image has degraded the entire concept of intuition, and due to this negative connotation, has essentially robbed some individuals of the ability to access that wonderful voice, the gift of divine wisdom that we all possess. One person I interviewed for this book, Gabby Deeds, told me that the one question many of her clients ask is, "What is my purpose in this life?" Gabby explains, if every one of those people would simply open their minds and allow their guides, their inner voice, to lead them in the right direction, they would automatically be on the right path, fulfilling their purpose. The people who turn off that connection are the ones who are wandering around aimlessly, frustrated and confused, and ultimately unhappy. It is my hope that by demystifying intuitive ability, we can leave misconceptions about this marvelous gift in the past. The message is that if we actually open our minds and listen to our inner voice, we can start traveling down the path that our individual souls are meant to follow. We are not alone in this world. We have loving guides who are there for us and who can help us become the best people that we can be. If we can realize this and become humble and just listen, we can fulfill our destiny and achieve great things for ourselves and for the world we live in. So the purpose of this book is twofold: to get the word out that there are gifted people to help us, and that it is good and even important to listen to your own inner voice. God, a higher power, the universe, the greater good, our guides, whatever we choose to call it, wants us to succeed, to be happy, to learn what we need to in this life, and to fulfill our purpose. These divine beings, these spirits, are on our side. They're rooting for us. 3. Today's brave paranormal explorers. I can't understand why people are frightened by new ideas. I'm frightened of the old ones. John Cage, American musician and philosopher. Today, studying the subject of intuitive ability, psi, is still largely shunned by many conventional scientists and the scientific community at large. However, even in this hostile, unwelcoming climate, there are some amazing people who are researching psi. These bold scientists are persevering and moving forward because they believe, based on experimental data, that there is a truth out there, a greater knowing, that has not yet been discovered, and that we, human beings, the planet, the universe, could all benefit from understanding. These scientific visionaries, Dean Radin, Gary Schwartz, and Russell Targ, are quite different from each other, but they share a common goal: to bring us to our next level, the evolution of consciousness. Each of these scientists has published many papers, studies, and books. This is an overview of their research, to provide an idea of the enormous contributions that these scientists have made to better understand the potential of psi, and, thanks to their findings, the subsequent and, hopefully, inevitable advancement of human consciousness. Dean Radin. Dean Radin, Ph.D., is a leading research scientist and parapsychologist who has been studying paranormal phenomena and the nature of consciousness for almost 40 years. Even though he is often confronted by skeptics and critics, Radin has steadfastly carried the psi research torch and will continue to do so until he discovers more about the nature of consciousness. As Radin writes in his autobiography, "My interest in psi was originally motivated out of a child's intuitive sense that the mind is far more mysterious and powerful than we know. Through education and experience, I've also come to appreciate that these experiences are also responsible for most of the greatest inventions, artistic and scientific achievements, creative insights, and religious epiphanies throughout history. I discovered while working on these topics that I enjoy the challenge of exploring the frontiers of science, and that I am comfortable tolerating the ambiguity of not knowing the right answer, which is a constant companion at the frontier." DeanRadin.com/newweb/bio.html. Dean Radin is currently the chief scientist at the Institute of Noetic Sciences, IONS, an organization that is at the forefront of consciousness research. Prior to joining IONS in 2001, Dean held appointments at AT&T Bell Labs, Princeton University, the University of Edinburgh, and SRI International. He began his career as a concert violinist, but ultimately followed his interest in science, earning a BS-EE degree in electrical engineering, magna cum laude, with honors in physics from the University of Massachusetts Amherst, and then an MS in electrical engineering and a PhD in psychology from the University of Illinois, Urbana-Champaign. Radin is author or co-author of some 250 technical and popular articles, 36 chapters in books, and 3 books, including the award-winning The Conscious Universe, Entangled Minds, and the 2014 Silver Nautilus Book Award winner, Supernormal. According to Radin, most people privately believe that intuitive ability does exist. From a popular perspective, all of the surveys have said that the majority of the population believes in these phenomena because it happens to them, or it happens to somebody that they know and trust, says Radin. Within the scientific community, it's the same, except that within science, you learn very quickly that you don't talk about this ever, because if you do, you'll put your career in jeopardy. One of the reasons that scientists are reluctant to talk about intuitive ability is that they can't explain where it comes from or how it works. Even sympathetic scientists are reluctant to talk about this because after we present empirical evidence that, yes, psychic ability is really real and we can show it under rigorous conditions, the next question is, well, how does it work? Radin explains. And science has yet to understand how it works. And I think that the reason why we don't understand it is because we need to have a different paradigm on which science rests. Currently, science bases its beliefs on the material or physical world. Every neuroscientist out there, at least most of them, fully believe that subjective awareness and consciousness are an effect of or an outgrowth of brain activity, says Radin. So if you're now talking about people who say that they can talk to dead people who have no brains, and they can get information from the future, it is literally impossible within that paradigm. And that's why even if a scientist will talk to a psychic on their own time, if somebody raises this topic, they'll deny it because it sounds anti-scientific. However, regardless of the taboo in the scientific community, Radin continues to do research on psi because he believes it is important for humanity. I think that it's actually important for the survival of the species to understand a lot more about the nature of consciousness and who we are and what we're capable of from an intuitive perspective. Because if we're walking around half blind to who and what we are, we're going to be walking into walls. And given what we see happening in the world today, we are collectively walking into walls all the time. When I was doing research for this book, I was amazed at how difficult it was to find scientists or academicians who study religion who would agree to discuss the topic of intuition and psychic ability. Some professors of religion and some scientists balked at my request to talk about these subjects, saying, "Oh no, I don't go in for that New Age stuff. That would be a waste of my time." So I was thrilled to learn that Dean Radin had discovered the very same thing over the years. In his latest book, Supernormal, Radin muses about the fact that both scientists and religious scholars turn away from studying psi and the subject of intuitive ability and are often adamantly opposed to the possibility that these abilities exist at all. It is hardly surprising that these topics are too disturbing to be studied either by religious scholarship or by science. The presence of real siddhis, real psychic effects lurking in the dark boundaries between mind and matter, are so frightening and disorienting that defense mechanisms immediately snap into place to protect our psyches from these disturbing thoughts. We become blind to personal psychic episodes and to the supportive scientific evidence. We conveniently forget mind-shattering synchronicities, and if the intensity of the mysterium tremendum becomes too hot, We angrily deny any interest in the topic while backing away and vigorously making the sign of the cross. Within science, this sort of behavior is understandable. Science doesn't like what it can't explain because it makes scientists feel stupid. But the same resistance is also endemic in comparative religion scholarship, which is supposed to be the discipline that studies the sacred. Radin Dean, Supernormal, Science, Yoga, and the Evidence for Extraordinary Psychic Abilities. Even though there are significant challenges ahead, Dean Radin is determined to continue his research. I think that the way that I persist in the face of a huge amount of resistance in the scientific community is that I see this more as a long-term effort that simply needs to be done. So I'm part of a stream that is happening, and maybe I won't live to see the paradigm change, but somebody needs to be working on it at some point in history, because otherwise it will never change, and humans may well run headlong into extinction. Perhaps we're all on some kind of a long-term thrust to raise the collective consciousness or to gain a better sense of who and what we are and what reality's all about. It's just surprisingly difficult to get most people to think beyond what's directly in front of their face. Gary Schwartz. Gary Schwartz, Ph.D., is a professor of psychology, medicine, neurology, psychiatry, and surgery at the University of Arizona and director of its Laboratory for Advances in Consciousness and Health. After receiving his doctorate from Harvard University and teaching there as an assistant professor, he served as a professor of psychology and psychiatry at Yale University, director of the Yale Psychophysiology Center, and co-director of the Yale Behavioral Medicine Clinic. He is the author of many books, including The Afterlife Experiments, The Energy Healing Experiments, The GOD Experiments, The Sacred Promise, and Super Synchronicity. Unlike some researchers, Schwartz doesn't identify himself as someone who's studying psi. First of all, I wouldn't use the word psi, because I am really not a psi researcher, even though others would label me as such, because I do research on life after death and the survival of consciousness hypothesis, says Schwartz. I've never approached this area as paranormal. If it is real, it is normal. And I believe that it's real and that it's normal. It may be supernormal or supernatural, but not in super as beyond, but super as in exceptional or strong. So supernatural to me is not natural, it's just some of the highest forms of natural. When asked why he chose to study intuitives to better understand consciousness, Schwartz has concluded that he was called to pursue this path. I think that the universe has been providing me with both the evidence and the inspiration to take on this challenge because I am, as far as I know, the only tenured professor at a major university in the world doing experimental mediumship research. That's how rare it is. But Schwartz is very clear about his purpose in his role as a researcher in this field. When people ask me, "Are you trying to prove survival of consciousness?" I say absolutely not. What I am trying to do is give survival of consciousness, if it exists, the opportunity to prove itself. All I am doing, which is my responsibility as a scientist, is to provide the optimal conditions for discovery, whether something is true or not, with appropriate controls. And for the record, if I could do all of this anonymously, I would. Not because of the fear of ridicule, but because it's not about me. It's about the energy. And it's not about you, it's about the universe. According to Schwartz, the study of mediums and mediumship research is a critical test of a core belief of materialist science. Materialist science says very clearly that the brain creates consciousness. Matter first, mind second, says Schwartz. Therefore, when you die, your mind is dead because the brain is dead. Case closed. The new science is saying no. Matter does not create mind. Mind is...
Sample complete. Ready to continue?